In the world of One Punch Man is a hero so strong that it is said he is solely responsible for the existence of the human race, as he used his powers to travel back in time and save the planet from a swarm of meteors that were set to destroy the Earth. He once held onto a bomb powerful enough to erase the entire solar system and threw it into a black hole. It is said that every mythological story ever written was all foreshadowing his birth. That man is King.
Are you serious right now, bro?
But how much of this is really true? And what actually is his true power? Well, to understand how he became the most powerful man that has ever walked the earth, we need to rewind to when he was just a kid. To the day he gained his iconic scar, facing off against a disaster-level god monster in a fight to the death. However, the truth of the matter is that the monster, Octopus Clawman, was merely disaster-level tiger. When he attacked, the people panicked, and one of them was King himself. He was instantly knocked down and given that scar, and at that moment, he was destined for death. In spite of this, one man stepped in to save the day. A young lad with a head full of luscious hair and a fist full of even more power, Saitama. And this wouldn't be the first time Saitama saved King's skin. During 5 other occasions, including against Vaccine Man, the Caped Baldy kept him alive. And in the end, he even gave King his career. Because he always left the scene of the attack covered in monster blood and guts, Bro was given the credit for saving the city. It's even said that King uses the moon as a punching bag. In fact, yeah, King will get the credit for the massive crater that Saitama left on it during the fight with Boros. Now, from that point, the legend of King began to snowball. Reports of a mysterious man who defeats dragon-level monsters for fun. And while the Hero Association fell for it hook, line, and sinker, they promoted King all the way to S-Class straight off the bat without even letting him take a single exam. In spite of this, when he's asked how to deal with the dark matter feats, he panics. The King engine rumbles and he simply claims that there's nothing he can do. The UFO is too high in the sky and so they should just call in Metal Knight instead. But even Tatsumaki realizes at that moment that Bro is waffling. Nonetheless, he retains his facade of being the most powerful being in the world. So the question is, why and how? Well, remember, he is S-Class rank 7, and that number right there, the number 7, is actually the key to it all. That is the source of King's true power. Luck. Something we see in action when King is out in M City. He's not out looking for trouble, but fate, the destiny, the universe, the gods, whatever you want to call it, has other ideas. Because who does King bump into? Tongue Stretcher. He doesn't even notice him at first, but then the wind blows his hat off, revealing that iconic scar, and his King engine starts rumbling. The King engine, of course, being the biggest scam in all of One Punch Man. On paper, this is the most terrifying ability in the series, bar none. Like, get out of there with that serious punch nonsense. This is a deep, ominous rumbling that echoes throughout the air. It's so intimidating that it's enough to make even heroes and monsters stop in their tracks. But the reality? It's literally just King's heartbeat. Bro is so scared out of his mind every time danger shows up that his heart just pounds like a war drum. Thus, that haunting rumbling isn't King just aura farming, it's the sound of a man on the verge of a panic attack. However, it's also where his true power kicks in, as when Tongue Stretcher feels the King engine's pure killer intent, he collapses, literally begging for his life. Then the nearby NPCs cheer for King, and before you know it, reality begins to bend. Then King gets so overwhelmed by the cheering crowd that when he says he just wants to go shopping, people panic and clear a path like Moses parting the sea, only to be met by Machine God G4. This AI is here to battle King to test its combat abilities. Thus, the strongest man on Earth is about to bluff that he can't give him sufficient data unless he goes to the toilet first, as he can't go all out if he has to hold it in. But of course, in reality, my guy was just trying to come to terms with the reality that he would have to make a run for it, resulting in the death of hundreds of people. Luckily for him though, Genos was there to stop that from happening. Nonetheless, the guilt that fell upon King that day was beyond immeasurable, and so he went home to play some video games, as you do, only to be met by Saitama. He asks why King ran away from G4, wondering if it's perhaps that he's so strong that monsters and fighting just bore him. What Saitama means here is that he's hoping and thinking that King is just like him. And well, if I'm honest, he just might be, because that is when a disaster level demon monster suddenly appears and attacks King. Saitama theorizes that powerful monsters may actually be attracted to him, to which the S-Class hero mentions more and more monsters do keep appearing before him. Now we later learn that Blast theorizes that something or someone is pulling God's dimension closer to Earth, insinuating that person is responsible for the growing number of powerful monsters. The reason Saitama is that person is because he's referred to as the fist that went against God. Basically, because he removed his limiter, which is something God places on humans to cap their power levels, more monsters are being sent after Saitama to kill him. Nonetheless, because the monster came for King, Saitama says he has to accept that battle. However, when King tries to explain that it's all a lie, that he's a bum, the sound of the monster attacking actually drowns out the confession. Now this would of course normally be another case of his insane meta look activating, and yet Saitama actually hears him loud and clear, which is exactly when King realizes the caped Baldy is him. But what he doesn't realize is that the source of this look may just well be the same source as Saitama's strength. But more on that later, as I have a theory as to how King is able to bend reality like this to serve him. Because the next time these two are together, King absolutely cooks Saitama when the two play video games together. However, there's actually a deeper message to all of this here. You see, King unleashes a 5-minute long infinite combo, absolutely whooping Saitama's ass to the point that he even calls the game total BS. Well, this actually foreshadows Saitama's final battle with Garou, much like how Saitama's strength kept growing exponentially, meaning Garou could never catch him, which is the case for Saitama and King just in video games. He cannot catch the S-Class hero, no matter what. Then, much like how Saitama said that it was all BS, Garou claims the Baldy is the embodiment of unfairness. Even the way King's character lands a punch is the same way Saitama does against Garou. King even wins the game whilst using just 2 fingers, the same way Saitama only used 1 hand against Garou. And again, this links to my theory that I want to talk about later regarding how King might have actually broken his limiter. But first, we need to talk about his next big dub. Because when Elder Centipede attacked and threatened the entire city, there was only one man the Hero Association could rely on, and that was of course King. However, he had quite a strange request upon getting the call to join the action. He simply just wanted to know what he could say to provoke Elder Centipede, which was to say that his greatest enemy, Blast, wanted a rematch. Now why did he want to know this info? Well, it was easy, to draw the monster in close so that he could land the killer blow. Now was it using his super sparkling King mode, the Super Saiyan form that Child Emperor believes that he has? No, of course not. It was Saitama, because of course it was. He takes all the credit for the Baldy's actions. He left it until the final moment to land a serious punch and disintegrate the Centipede on the spot. But when the entire Saitama squad are back celebrating together at the Baldy's place, King is the one Genos elects to deal with the high-speed threat approaching, as he is the only one capable. Luckily for him though, it's just Dr. Kusuno coming to see Genos. Thus, whilst they scrap over Hot Pot together, King takes 1 hit in the face, which is actually enough to just completely knock him clean out. However, the next morning, when Saitama kicks him out, he tells King to take the rubbish with him, a job that even he can't F up. But even then, he's nearly caught in Z City, which is abandoned. Nonetheless, even that mission came with great praise from the Hero Association, as the rubbish stains he's covered in get misinterpreted as blood and guts from powerful monsters that he spent all night killing. Even the likes of Amaya Mask and Tatsumaki are impressed by this feat, as his presence alone is enough to break up a fight going on between them, Zombie Man, and Flashy Flash. Moreover, he's invited on the raid against the Monster Association. In spite of this, he tries to just hide away, as the panic stare he gives Child Emperor upon hearing that Drive Knight has gone MIA facing the monsters gets mistaken as a heroic death stare destined for revenge. But with King knowing he's completely out of his depth, he tries to hide away, accidentally bumping into Bang and Bomb, leaking information on the mission. Nonetheless, with his King's engine roaring, the other S-Class heroes assume that King is hiding away, focusing on locking in for the big war. However, when Bang and Bomb agree to tag along with him, bringing Saitama with them, the King engine stops, as he's finally relieved that he might actually get out of this alive. That is, at least until Saitama doesn't show up, causing his extreme anxiety to begin again. However, King was able to use his crazy ability to scam his way to avoid being the main attack force by claiming that he'd go go on alone, to which it was seen as a clean and effective decision. Nonetheless, as he ended up alone, exploring the base and running away from one of Yorogoro's surveillance flies, Bro displayed his insane light speed by falling through a hole in the floor. Yet this was enough to trick Yorogoro, whose eyeball was subsequently destroyed from behind by Saitama, who was mistaken as king. Again, he takes the credit. But it goes even deeper. The Caped Baldy had just returned from killing the king of monsters himself, Lord Orochi. In spite of this, both Yorogoro and Tatsumaki gave the credit, again, to King. But even he pushed his luck to even crazier and hilarious heights next, as before him stood a child hostage taken by the monster association called Waganma, or so he thought. As King knows him, this kid, his reputation after all of this is cooked. Man's not protecting anybody here, and so he hits him with the most depressing speech possible, telling Waganma that it's useless. If you decide to stick with him, your life will be over. You will only know despair from here on out. But here's where it gets wild, right? That wasn't Waganma. It was a monster in disguise as Waganma. And the second it hears King's words, it mistakes them as a threat. Bro thinks King has X-ray vision and has already saw through his otherwise perfect transformation. In fact, the fear was so bad that the monster literally just rage quits life, just melted into a pile of goop right there and then, as it couldn't handle the stress. And dying of stress is actually the perfect time for me to finally explain my little theory. Because like I said, it may just be that King has removed his limiter, allowing him to bend reality to always go his way. For example, Saitama pushed himself past the brink of death every single day with his ridiculous training, forcing his body to adapt until it became limitless. That's how he went from an average bozo to the strongest being alive. And he's not the only one. Garo was the same, breaking his limits throughout his journey to become absolute evil, and your boy actually covered that in a recent video if you want to go check that out. However, whilst he did it via monster battles and Saitama did it via gym talk challenges, the bottom line is that surviving death again and again until your body adapts is the key to evolution. And nobody has been in more near-death scenarios than King. Every single time a demon or dragon level monster showed up, King just seemed to be there. And each time, his heart would thunder in his chest as the so-called King engine would rumble as he was frozen in terror, convinced that he was about to die. And that's where this theory begins to take a little bit of shape. If breaking the limiter is all about conquering death repeatedly, then hasn't King been doing that all along? While Saitama adapted by building limitless strength, King may have adapted in a completely different way. His body didn't gain raw power, it instead just unlocked limitless luck. The craziest, most hilarious, most accidental version of Ultra Instinct, as reality itself just bends to keep him alive to uphold his reputation as the strongest man on Earth. That's why Child Emperor's power level scanner couldn't get a read on him, putting King in the same unidentified category as Saitama, which is another example of King's luck ability kicking into gear. At that moment, Child Emperor takes the Cape Baldy's power level, which causes it to crack because he's that strong. And yet the kid tells Saitama that he needs to train because he's that weak. But when King gets the same score, Child Emperor assumes that it's because it capped out at 9,999, when in reality we all know it's the other way around. Thus, with King's limitless luck, the world ensures that the legend of King never dies, even when he just does nothing. As King then bumps into Tario, who's crying his eyes out and runs straight into his arms like he just found the man that will save him. But King's PTSD is on a whole different level after what just happened with Waganma. So instead of hugging the kid, he explains to Tario that he knows what he's up to and what he really is. And well, in spite of this, King actually just does end up being right again, because there actually was a monster there, just an invisible one. Thinking King had just called it out by name, the thing just nopes on out of there immediately. Now from there he offers to hold Tario's hand for comfort because monsters are scary, and the scariest of them all was secretly following behind them, the remnants of Lord Orochi. Nonetheless, Saitama saved them by accident, once again one-shotting a monster somewhere else, sending shockwaves throughout the walls and dropping rocks into the water elevator system, shooting King and Tario straight up at rocket speed. easy. Thus, without even an iota of strategy, King was able to locate, save Tario, and escape the Monster Association base alone, allowing Tatsumaki to go all out without any danger of hurting a child. Nonetheless, it wouldn't be long until King returned to the battlefield to save the day, as it was finally time for him to unleash the ultimate Purgatory Hellfire Burst Wave Motion Cannon. Child Emperor hypes it up as King's ultimate secret technique, his so-called killer move. To the young boy, it's a god tier energy blast, so massive it could be seen from space. But here's the reality of what actually happened. When it seemed the Monster Association executives had the heroes surrounded, the King engine began to rumble. That's because for the first time, King was facing monsters that didn't fear his strength. If anything, they welcomed it. And first up was Homeless Emperor. But right before he attacks, King casually tells him to just watch out for his step as the rocks are loose. Now to King, this was just nervous small talk to try and stall for time, but Homeless Emperor took it as a death sentence. As if King was warning him that his attack would be futile, as the S-class hero would simply one-shot him before he could escape on the uneven surface. Thus, Homeless Emperor decides that he's going to expose the real King once and for all. Now, of course, this makes my guy panic, thinking that this lunatic somehow figured out that he is a fraud, which is when he mutters under his breath about being just a regular human. Thing is though, Homeless Emperor hears this. Thus, his entire life flashes before his eyes. It is the ultimate Uno reverse, because he now thinks King has seen through the fact that he is a fraud. As a result, Homeless Emperor rushes to fire off an energy sphere before King can reveal anything else. But before the attack can even land, Zombie Man pops out of nowhere, grabs him by the neck and slams him to the ground. Once again, King's reputation and insane metal look carry him through this untouched, giving King the chance to launch an attack of his own. Like I said, his ultimate. And with it, every monster is instantly obliterated in under a second, leaving all the other heroes speechless. But surprise, surprise, the truth is it wasn't even King at all. It was Garrow, moving so fast that nobody could even register it was him. He blitzed through the monsters, cut them down in an instant, and then zipped away before anyone could even what happened. King just happened to yell out a nonsense attack name at the exact same time, and so to everyone else it looked like he did it. He's once again shown to have limitless strength by taking the credit of those who actually have broken their limiter. And that's not all. Following this, Blast showed up, leaving Tatsumaki in his care, to which Fubuki & Co believed it was King who rescued the Tornado of Terror. But that might not even be the craziest thing that he did that day, as he actually saved Garrow from being beaten to death by the other heroes by unleashing his maximum output King's engine to scare every single person. That wasn't the only time King used his position of power to return the favor though, as when Saitama annihilated Metal Knight's crazily expensive defense robots, King backed up the baldy by claiming that they just self-destructed. But perhaps the most overpowered use of King's luck ability was the fact that he caught a glimpse of a sight some people wondered was even real. A conundrum that has plagued the minds of humanity for years gone by. Does Tatsumaki wear underwear? Well, the answer is yes, and King saw it. Nonetheless, his streak of legendary feats soon continued, as that's when Atomic Samurai decides it was time to test the true power of the strongest man on Earth. Now here, King was just trying to eat his lunch in peace, but they hear the King engine and already assume that he's ready to go all out. But King does what he does best and tries to defuse the situation, only to dig himself an even bigger hole by choking on sushi. Thus he loses balance and points chopsticks forward, to which the group of samurai take as a declaration of war. Both impressed and angered by King's confidence to challenge Atomic Samurai makes him slash an apple into infinite pieces, scaring the hell out of King, threatening him to step outside, where Atomic Samurai urges him to attack as if he is a monster. Now, as one would expect, King is 2 words away from pissing his pants, and we get the standard, he's full of openings. No, he has no openings. But it's at that moment that King proves what sets him apart from every other hero, as he heroically states, "Let's stop this, Atomic Samurai. Did you forget that it is Tuesday?" I mean, come on guys, you know, even Ian knows. What else is there to say? I mean, the atmosphere consists of 80% nitrogen and 20% oxygen, along with other elements. One of the most unknown being Enger Watson. It reacts with polylesms contained in ionizing radiation, causing the organophose phenomenon. Oh, and don't forget that last Thursday there was a full moon, so obviously that means that today at exactly noon it changed to a dual squat phase. It has begun. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I don't even have a clue what my guy's waffling about here. King literally just hits him with a random bullshit go and baited Atomic Samurai's disciples into believing in the Dolzenebring reaction. They were just sitting there in stunned silence, convinced that they just got hit with the biggest of truth bombs. It's like when you ask ChatGPT the meaning of something totally made up, but it believes you and gives you the meaning anyway. In spite of this, King began to realize that luck wasn't enough anymore. He simply couldn't live with the guilt of being a fraud, and so he went out in search of true power. He tried confessing to Bang that he was a total fraudster and needed training, but in spite of this, he simply tells King how relieved he is to lament his own weaknesses, as the stronger one is, the more aware of their weaknesses they are, and for that reason, it proves that King truly is powerful. Therefore, Bang is reluctant to help and instead sends him to his brother, Bomb. However, he too thinks that he has nothing to teach King and sends him off to someone else. But again, that dojo rejects him, as there's nothing they can do that will ever top the King-style King Kong arts, and instead forward him to another dojo. And before he knew it, King was rejected by every single dojo possible. Not because he was too weak, but simply because he was too strong. Thus, the one place left for him was the legendary Final Training Ground, a place where everyone who seeks to train beyond their limits ends up. Which is when, inside, he sees a man seemingly on his deathbed. Because remember, break your limiter, you must conquer death. Ultimately though, King chickens out and runs home to play video games with Saitama, who just gives him the advice he really needs. Just live, dude. Now, if you enjoyed this video, make sure you leave a like, subscribe, ding that notification bell, and whilst you're here, you may as well check this video out on your screen right now.